First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk. You know, guys, I got an email a few weeks back asking if I could do a video for correctional nurses. Now, guys, remember, that's not my expertise, but it's Connie's. So Connie is going to come on after the sponsor. She's going to give out some tips, some advice, but ultimately she's going to really do a video that showcases the hard work and effort that correctional nurses provide every day to this profession. It's a very tough profession. I mean, they also get the worst of it as well. You know, this is a prison, these are jails, and these correctional nurses go above and beyond in making sure that the environment is as safe as possible and that the inmates, as well as staff in some cases, are taken care of above and beyond. So again, kudos to our correctional nurses out there. This is going to be a good video for custody also to watch, or any other service provider outside of correctional nurses, because it's going to give you an understanding of their role, a better understanding of their perspective. And I think with that understanding comes recognition and respect. So I think it's a great video. I love it. I think it's a video that's very informative, a lot of knowledge. So can't wait to see what you guys think. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. I'm going to go to our sponsor, and when I come back, I'm going to hand over my venue, our venue at this point, to Connie Alleyne. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Hi, Connie Alleyne here from the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm really excited to talk about this with you guys today. So Anthony asked me to do a video on correctional nursing. And at first I was like, I don't even know where to start. So first I want to start by saying I take my hats off to correctional nurses. I really firmly believe that they are the backbone to our correctional health system. Quite frankly, I think they're the backbone to our healthcare system in general, but you know, I don't want to speak out of turn. It's not, you know, the statistics are not my area of expertise. However, it just seems like there's more of them than there are specialists, and they are leaned on for everything and anything. In the correctional environment, like, nurses are tasked with achieving Mount Everest with very little resources. And so the fact that you have nursing teams in these correctional environments that are providing the best level of care that they can with minimal resources says a great deal about correctional nurses. And so for someone who's new to the system, who has access to all the technology from the hospitals and such, like, don't come into corrections expecting to see that, because those instances are few and far between unless you're in some sort of specialty clinic or a special facility that, you know, their focus is medical, right? There are places where there are some investments in more technology, and there are much more places where they're not. So coming in, you need to be able to at least do a blood pressure without having the machine that does it for you, because for the most part you got your stethoscope and you've got your blood pressure cuff, and it's back to manual hands-on nursing. For some nurses that don't want to have that touch barrier broken between them and an inmate, this is really probably not the place for you, right? I think the other thing to note is that this is an environment where you can't be afraid to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty, because nurses are called on for everything. And granted, there are some environments where you have a nurse practitioner, you might have the nursing supervisors, you have your RN, your LPN, your CNA. I understand that as the scope of certain licensures have changed, the role, what the LPN can do has changed from state to state. And I know some places had done away with CNAs, but have allowed CNAs to work with some of the hospice patients. So there's still some things that can be done at all levels of nursing and corrections, but just know that when you come in, you might start out in one unit. By the end of your shift, you're in another unit. And because that's just how fluid the environment is, you just never know where you're going to be or what you're going to be needed to do. You never know what the next intake is going to be, quite frankly. You know, the correctional environment houses the sickest of the populations that you can have, right? For many of these individuals, prison, jail is their first contact with healthcare, right? Many of them don't have any health insurance in the community. So they come into the prison, they come into a jail, they're going through intake. This is the first time they're being seen by medical anywhere, right? And so nursing on intake is tasked with stabilizing these men and women and children, and making sure that they at least get through the night, right? Until the doc is in that morning, who can do a more thorough assessment. And even then, there's no guarantee it's going to happen in 24 hours. So just know that as a nurse, the expectations are significant. And if there's something you don't feel comfortable with, you have to bring it forward to the nursing supervisor, or even talk about it with your colleagues. People who've been there a little longer than you may have experienced things that maybe you haven't experienced as of yet. But, you know, I think it really just matters that when you come in as a nurse, that you do your best to understand what the nursing protocols are. Ask questions. You don't see one for a particular issue that has come up, ask somebody about it. Ask your nurse, the nursing supervisor, ask other nurses. Just really knowing you don't want to be caught out there not knowing your stuff, and then an emergency happens. You're being recorded as you respond to that particular code, and you do something out of step. God forbid something happens to that particular offender, and there's now an audit of the video of what you performed, right? And granted, there is some leeway in it's a stressful time, it's a tense time, it's chaotic. Like, people forget stuff, right? But you got to be real clear on how you document the things that you've done or the things that you didn't do. And knowing those protocols are essential. So if you know the protocol and in the moment you chose not to do something that might have been the next step, when you go to document, you need to make sure you document why it wasn't done, particularly because you want to be able to highlight that you know the protocol and it was your judgment call in the moment to skip a particular step for whatever reason, right? So being an agile nurse really matters. I think the other thing too is being a nurse that's just very conscientious, right? Like that you are aware of what's going on in other parts of the facility. And if there's a time where you got free time, I'm just joking about free time. I know nurses don't have free time. I had a nurse come to me and was like, Connie, I didn't even get to pee today. I peed at the end of shift. And like, to me, like, that's really crappy, you know, that we don't have enough flexibility in most systems to have a floater to relieve people for breaks, for lunch, like whatever it is for you to maintain your mental health throughout the day. And don't get me wrong, I do acknowledge that there are some nurses that thrive on that, like busy, because it helps the shift go by quicker and they're able to get all their stuff done. But there are some who just need to take a break. And depending on where you are, the level of accountability is so much greater. You know, say you're in the medical unit, so you're in the mental health unit and someone's decompensating. As the nurse on the floor, you didn't notice that. Or you're overdoing meds and you didn't realize that this person hasn't swallowed, right? Like, what's the protocol for meds, right? You don't have the best relationship with the officer who should have probably done a second check, a second mouth check. Like, it's like all these moving parts, You know, this person needs a blood draw. The phlebotomist isn't here. Maybe your system, you don't have a phlebotomist, and this person don't really know how to do a blood draw. Like, who knows what's going to happen and which of your skills are going to be needed, but you just know that you've got to be prepared for whatever that might bring. And then let's just throw on the fact that this is a non-traditional work environment, and you got inmates who are trying to get extras out of you. Oh, could you just give me that extra bacitration ointment? Nope. If that's not the standard of care, that's not the protocol, that's not what you're supposed to give him, nope, you could not and you should not give it to him, you know, or her, right? Because it happens all populations. And I think also too, like, if you aren't mindful, right, you're handling sharps. Forget about if you're the MAT nurse and everyone's trying to get those meds. Like, there's just so many moving parts that on top of knowing your nursing work, you've got to be mindful of all this other stuff that's going on. That includes, all right, did I put an extra needle down somewhere? Did I document everything I needed to document? Did I double check my count? Did I make sure I had everything I was supposed to have? And honestly, it's all about integrity. Because if you check your count and something is off, the moment you realize it's off, you need to let somebody know it's off. Why? Because when the audit is done, the first thing they're going to look at is how many counts went by that no one noticed that this was off, or was everybody complicit? You don't want to be that person, right? And so you make sure you're doing your best, right? You're doing your job to the best of your ability. You communicating openly and transparently to your supervisor. That way your supervisor is able to provide you with the necessary support and guidance that they need to provide you with. And really, you know, it's make sure you document. The last thing you need is for something to have happened to an inmate and you were the last person to see that inmate. And you didn't document what you saw them for and what the actions that you took were and what your follow-up plan was going to be, right? It's very difficult from even an administrative perspective, going to these union hearings, trying to support the nurse that I know is a great nurse, and this was just simple oversight. Other people are a little more skeptical. When you know somebody, you know, personally, or you know them because you've worked with them longer, I've had a pretty good relationship with the nurses that I've worked with. And when we found errors through chart audits and stuff, like, it is great to know that there is an administrator or someone in authority who can say, I'm sure that wasn't intentional, because that's a great nurse. That's not something that person would do, you know, because when there's the investigation, it's easier to err on the side of they're guilty, let's get rid of them, right? Because then you don't have to try to like even think about, we gave them a second chance and let's see whether or not they're gonna mess up, or what's that gonna look like, right? And forget about if you end up on custody's radar, because you now become the nurse that does this thing, whatever that thing is, right? You just don't want that to be the case. So you step into the world of corrections, you act within the highest level of integrity that you have. You openly communicate to your supervisor, to your colleagues, so people know what's going on. Nothing could be misinterpreted or misread, simply because nursing staff have way more interaction with the population. And I've seen plenty of nurses get caught up in stuff unintentionally. Oh, well, they asked me for this. I was just giving this, trying to be helpful. And so then it looks like undue familiarity. And that's not what you want. So I welcome all new nurses into the field, all you soldiers that been in there for, you know, doing your best with what you have. Like, I applaud you. I thank you for hanging in there. We know that relationships can be strained. It can be very hard, even sometimes hard working with your doctor, right? Trying to keep the clinic moving, trying to keep the doctor productive. It can be challenging. So all these areas of correctional nursing that we know have embedded challenges in them, just hang in there. Know that that's what you kind of sign up for. You sign up for knowing that I have obligations that I have to meet, but I also know that I'm competing with all the operational disruptions that are going to happen, right? There's going to be count time. You know, there's going to be count. You know, there's going to be a lockdown here or there. You know, there's going to be some other administrative thing going on. And you still going to have to remember, I've got Jane Doe or John Doe going on a medical visit. I got to make sure like that their meds are there. I got to make sure their special diet is there in the morning before they get transported. Like, it's all those kind of little things that we think, oh, it's no big deal, I'll make it happen. Until you realize how much real estate that stuff takes up in your head. When you go home and you're thinking, oh, did I remember to sign off on that thing? Did I remember to tell the oncoming nurse that this was the protocol we agreed on? Did I remember to document? I tell you, I take my hat off to the nurses, because you guys have to remember a lot, and you stay on your feet all day, and the patients keep you busy, and forget if there's a code and things get thrown off, and forget if there's in-service training that you need to come offline to do, but you haven't been scheduled to be offline, and somehow you got to try to do that training while you're sitting in the unit. And forget about the nurses that are going out to go do meds, that have carts of meds or wagons of meds, or however it's set up in your facility, and you're going tier to tier. Forget when there's a lockdown. So just know that there are people out there who understand what your struggle is from day to day, and that are out there trying to advocate for you to get the support that you need, so that you don't have to be on such high alert from the perspective of covering your butt. Right? Now, cover your butt, right? Because that's another thing. I just want to highlight, when you get into the facility and you've got your scrubs on, just make sure you got a little room in those scrubs. I have seen some scrubs so tight that you could see the pattern that's printed on someone's underwear. Now, if you're there looking for a spouse, I would just have to tell you, err on the side of caution, right? I mean, there are many officer-nurse relationships that go well, and there are some that go totally wrong. And when they go totally wrong, it is very difficult for you to come back as the nurse and not have other officers understand and know all of your business. Makes it for a very uncomfortable and hostile work environment from time to time. So I would just tell you, proceed with caution. And as far as the tight clothes go, when you respond to a code, you got to get into a tight space. Those tight pants give you no ability to maneuver. And just know that that is on camera, right? And when we're reviewing the cameras to review the code, to see what's happening, you got to know somebody is like, oh my goodness, this woman's pants is going to bust open. You got to know how many inmates are looking at you walk the corridor with your tight pants on. Just be careful sort of what you put out there, right? Because that's just a reality. So listen, I think you all are great. There are always those one or two bad apples that's out there doing stuff they got no business doing. Understand all the rules and regulations. Understand what's contraband and what's not. Bring nothing in, right? I used to tell my nurses, you come in, you got your lunch, great. You got your keys for your car, you got a piece of identification, great. Pocketbook with all your personals in there is no good. Coming in, talking all your personal business, no good. You want to talk to your colleague who you work with every day about what happened with you and your relationship and your outside personal stuff, just know that there are ears listening, there are eyes watching, and you don't want to end up having divulged something personal and one of the offenders get a hold to it and they use it against you, right? That is just a reality of where we work at, that those kind of things can happen. So a little bit of clinical, a little bit of security, a little bit of personal. Just watch yourself in there. Do your best in there. Advocate for yourself. You need training, something you don't understand, let somebody know. No one is expecting you to know everything. And from an administrative perspective, we cannot guess what you don't know. Yes, there are some best practices and there's some trainings that are universal that everyone will get when they step into certain systems. But there's certain stuff we just don't know that you need. And if it's a certain need you have, bring it forward and arrangements will be made for you to get that training, right? Until next time, I'm Connie Alleyne, Civilian Corrections Academy. Check me out, www.conniealleyne, that's ALLEYNE.com. You guys be safe out there.